Let's close our eyes for a moment. Imagine you are a 10-year-old sitting in a room, unable to see the walls around you. But under your fingertips, you feel the raised dots. As you glide through the dots, the quiet room disappears. You're piloting a spaceship into the deep space. You're exploring all the galaxies and traveling to the edge of the universe. Our guest today did not use Braille to just read, but he conquered the cosmos with it. A pioneer, a skier flying through the snowy mountains, experiencing the nature around and daring only through his senses. A Braille educator who helps thousands to find light in the dark. This is Suda Raja Gopalan of Access Braille, your podcast host for the series Beyond Sight, Beyond Limits. Welcome, Frank, to the show.
Hello.
Yeah, it is amazing that you got so passionate about sci-fi, and kind of walk us through that journey of how you got into Braille.
Well, I was born blind with a retinopathy of prematurity, and so I was fortunate to receive appropriate blindness education through the public schools from an early age. I did not go to a school for the blind. I was mainstreamed, but I had good instructors who taught me the basics of Braille and the like. I started Braille very early in my education. I was introduced to the very rudiments when I was 5, and then more to formal Braille instruction when I was 6. And then for the next few years, I learned increasingly complex use of Braille over the next few years, in much the same way as a primary school child would begin with very simple written print, and then gradually learn more complex things like longer words and more complex sentences and the like. So I would say that my Braille learning paralleled my print language learning in the sense that I think that it followed the projection, that the trajectory of my peers in school as I was learning to read and they were learning to read. But I would say I was not a very good Braille reader during those first few years. And I now attribute to that I hadn't found the particularly interesting vehicle that would motivate me to do much reading. That changed when I was probably about 10 years old, that at about that time, my mother had enrolled me in the Braille and Talking Book program that's operated through regional libraries of the Library of Congress here in the United States. So for the first few years, I was getting audiobooks on long playing records back in the day before they had cassettes and so forth. But that was great. It gave me a lot of it gave me access to a lot of children's literature, so that even though I wasn't reading it in Braille, I was being exposed to appropriate writing. And of course, I was using some Braille in school. And then when I was about the age of 10, my mother ordered a couple of science fiction books that I wanted because I was starting to get interested in the ideas of science fiction. This was in the late 60s when the U.S. space program was very prominent. And so probably every child my age wanted to be an astronaut. And so stories about space were very interesting to me and I think most of my peers. And so I began reading a science fiction book for young people that and when I started it, I'd say I was very slow and probably not fully comprehending what I was reading, but the subject was so interesting that it motivated me to keep going. And as I worked my way through the books, I got better and better reading this book. It was a I believe it was a 3-volume Braille book at the time. So that was, by my standards at the time, a very large book. But again, because the story was interesting, I was motivated to keep going. And I read several other similar books that school year, and my Braille began to improve. And it became something that, as I had access to books that were of interest to me, that I was motivated to read more and more. And when you have that experience of enjoying a skill, it's sort of self-reinforcing, because the more you enjoy it, the better you get at it. The better you get at it, the more you enjoy it, and it's a positive cycle. And
Yes.
so and I attribute that experience to making me a lover of reading. And then later in life, when I was an adult and I found myself traveling on buses a lot, I got in the habit of carrying a Braille magazine with me in my bag, so that most of the time while I was riding on those long bus rides, I would be reading along in this magazine, and that improved my Braille reading even more. So the result of that is that I think I found that, and it's something that I advise anybody who expresses some interest in learning Braille, but some concern about whether they can learn Braille, is that I assure them that Braille can be learned. It's not as hard as people might think it is. It's not as hard as learning, say, a foreign language, although some people think Braille is a language. It's not. It's more akin to learning a new way of writing. For example, when a child first learns the printed alphabet, and then after a couple of years with that, they start being taught how to do handwriting. And those are different shaped characters, but the characters are the same characters. So the alphabet is still the alphabet, even though it's drawn with different characters. And Braille is the same way. It's still the English alphabet or the French alphabet or whatever alphabet you're learning, but it's done in as dots that you touch, raised dots, rather than lines and squiggles as you have in other language, in a printed alphabet. But the experience is very much, I think, the same. And so if you have something that is interesting that you want to read, also if it's a subject that you have some knowledge of. So for example, if you're an adult and you want to learn Braille, and there's a particular subject that you're passionate about, think of the kind of book that you would read as a sighted person that you wouldn't dare pick up on a work night, because you know that you wouldn't put it down until 3 in the morning, and then you'd have to go to the next. Find that kind of a subject, whatever that is. Maybe for some people it might be science fiction. For some people it might be mysteries. For some people it might be being able to read the Bible or the Quran or some other sacred text. Or for some people it might be a subject that relates to a hobby of theirs, like sport or stamp collecting or history. But whatever that subject or subjects is that you just love to learn about passionately,
Yeah.
look for Braille books on that subject, because you'll have two things going for you. One is that you'll have interest, and another thing that you'll have going for you is that you probably have a certain level of knowledge about the vocabulary that used in that subject. So that as you're reading Braille and you're trying to guess, what is this word? Since you know what the subject is, you have a pretty good idea of what the words are that you're looking at, and that helps you learn the Braille, recognize the Braille characters that corresponds to words you already know, and your experience will be enhanced.
Yeah,
And
that's a
then read as much Braille as you can. So, for example, as I say, if you're going to be riding a lot of buses, make sure you bring a Braille magazine with you all the time.
Yeah, I think that's a very good piece of advice, Frank. Thank you for that. And I think I liked your analogy as well, where it's not a new language, it's a different way of representing.
That's
So,
right.
yeah, it's really beautifully said. And I know that you have so much love for Braille, and that's why you're continuing to promote it by being a California Braille Literacy League president, and
Yes, that's
also
right.
participating in a Braille Challenge and leading the effort of Braille Challenge. For the
Yes,
viewers who may not know what is a Braille Challenge, I think it is kind of similar to the spelling bee for the sighted.
that's right. And let me tell you about that, is that
Yes,
first
yeah,
off, I'll mention that I am president of a group called the Braille Revival League of California, and it's kind of a clever acronym, by the way, because in Braille, we have something called contracted Braille, where in order to
Uh-huh.
save space,
Uh-huh.
we use shortcut versions of words. For example, the word the is written with one Braille character in order to save space. And
Mm.
so, interestingly enough, the abbreviation for Braille in English Braille is BRL, the letters BRL.
Ah, okay.
So we came up with this name for this organization called the Braille B Revival R League L, and it's BRL. And so my organization is the Braille Revival League BRL of California C, and it's affiliated with a group called the California Council of the Blind, which is a statewide organization that is affiliated with one of the two national organizations of the blind. This one is the American Council of the Blind. Anyway, so our group, the Braille Revival League, seeks ways to encourage people to use more Braille, encourages more availability for Braille, encourages governments to promote the use of Braille, and we do whatever we can to make that happen.
Can I just pause you for a second here, Frank?
Mm-hmm.
I know that there's so much technology, assistive technology that is available now. I know
Yes.
maybe 30, 40 years back, it was not there and you really
Yes.
needed to learn Braille. But
Yes.
why is it that Braille is absolutely necessary now also with so much technologies?
Well, we hear that. People will tell us, well, why you don't need to learn Braille, you can just use audiobooks.
Yeah, yeah.
My response to that is, gee, people who can see aren't told that they don't need to learn and read. And people who can see aren't told they don't need to read anymore because all they have to do is listen to audiobooks.
Mm,
Nobody would even think of that.
yes.
And the fact of the matter is that we communicate most effectively when we read and write the printed word, because that's where we actually can clearly define language through
Mm,
proper
mm,
spelling, proper punctuation, proper formatting of text, and that provides information that is critical to genuine literacy. And for blind people, the most effective literacy tool is Braille.
mhm,
Yes, you can have a talking computer that reads text in a document, but if you want to actually find out the spelling or you want to find out how a word is formatting, you have to jump through hoops to do that. It's not automatic, and
mhm.
it destroys the flow of reading when you have to stop and actually spell words. Where just like when you're reading a printed word, you're getting the spelling as you're reading it,
Mm,
and so when you're reading a Braille word, you're getting the spelling as you're reading it. It doesn't
yeah. It doesn't help you
degrade
with
the
the flow.
flow of reading.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so just as there's no substitute for a sighted person curling up with a good book, there's
Mhm.
no substitute for a blind person curling up with a nice Braille book in their lap. And it's the same thing. And
Yeah.
so Braille is important. There have also been studies that indicate that whereas the unemployment rate for people with disabilities is 70%, that's 70,
Yeah.
which is abominable.
Yes.
90% of blind people who are employed are Braille readers.
Mhm.
So Braille is not only a literacy tool, but it is a tool of economic empowerment.
Yes.
So that's why we're
Um,
so passionate about Braille.
yeah. Yeah. I know you were going to talk a little bit about Braille Challenge as well. Can you please?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I can tell you about that. One
Yes.
of the leading blindness service agencies in California is called the Braille Institute of America. They're based in Los Angeles in Southern California. I happen to live in Northern California, so I'm outside of their service area. But they because they're a very large organization, they have national influence. And one of the programs that they have is a program to encourage children and teenagers to read Braille, and it's called the Braille Challenge.
Hmm.
So every year in June, students from around the country come to Los Angeles and they participate in this event. Yes, it's kind of like a spelling bee, but more.
Mm,
The Braille Challenge consists of a series of tests that students take.
mm,
One is spelling, and one is spelling. One is is reading comprehension, where they read a passage and they answer questions about it.
Mm-hmm.
One is charts and graphs, where they're shown tactile graphics or charts, and they are then asked questions about the content of those charts to make sure that to test their level of comprehension of tactile graphical information. Just as sighted students experience charts and graphs and tables, blind students need to have a certain level of comfort with reading material tactily in graphical format, and that's what that tests. And then they have one which is probably the toughest one, called speed and accuracy, where they basically become like secretaries, where they are given a recorded text, and they have a timed period to copy as much of that recorded text into correct Braille as they can, and that's a very challenging thing, to be able to use your audible learning, but then convert that into written format competently. That's a very good challenge for measuring a person's level of Braille competency. So the students take these 4 tests, and then they're graded for each of the tests, and then their grades are compared, and the students with the best scores are the winners. And this event divides students by age group. So, for example, if you're a 7-year-old, you're not competing against a 17-year-old. The groups are there are 5 groups, so roughly it's about 2 or 3 years of grade levels in the United States, from the early grades in primary school right up to the end of secondary school. And so that's the Braille Challenge nationally. But in addition to that, Braille Institute has promoted the development of regional events around the country. I think there are several dozen of them. And so where my involvement came in is that a Braille Challenge has been held for probably the last 15 or 20 years in Northern California, and it shuttles between 3 locations in the San Francisco Bay Area. One year they do it at the Lighthouse for the Blind in downtown San Francisco. One year they do it at the Vista Center for the Blind in downtown San Jose, which is also another large Bay Area city. And then finally, they do it one year at the California School for the Blind, which is the state's blind school for blind students who are studying in a residential school setting. That is in Fremont, California, which is about halfway between San Francisco and San Jose. So so we shuttle between those each year, and so it's a 1-day event where we come together on a Saturday and the students compete, and then the students with the best scores are selected to go on to the national event. So what they do is there are winners at the local event, but all the scores for all the students are sent in to the Braille Institute. And I think it's something like the top 60 students in the country, based on their scores, are brought together for a national competition, which is, I have not had the privilege of participating in that, but I hear it's really great. And so that's the Braille Challenge. It's a wonderful event. It empowers students. It inspires students. It gives students at an early age a passionate love for Braille. And that is, you really see the adult in the growth that students experience by participating in this program, not just in terms of their reading, but in terms of their positive feelings about their lives as blind students, their opportunities to make friends from all around the country. It's just a wonderful event, and it shows the power of Braille and of community.
Yeah, that's really awesome. I thought I read somewhere that this year they also had an international participant from Australia and who won the competition or something like that.
Fabulous.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure that they've had Canadian students, but I'm excited to hear that they've got an Australian student coming, and I hope that keeps growing. That of course, there are English-speaking students around, in many countries around the world. Who knows? Maybe someday they'll start doing this in multiple languages. But of course, one of the largest English-speaking countries in the entire world is India. So let's hope that India really gets into the Braille Challenge, right?
That's right. That would be really awesome. Yes. And
Yes.
I think, I would love it if there's some kind of a Braille learning program, mostly for survival, for people like me who became visually impaired later. If there is some program like that, I would love to enroll in it, because it seems to be too daunting to get into the regular program at this point in time for me. Yeah.
Yeah, but then unfortunately there are a number of programs. There are a number of things, and I'm sure that you will have other guests who will get into more detail. But I know
Yes.
one of the people that you're looking to have a guest is Dr. Shah,
Sure.
Balin Shah from the East
Yes.
Bay Center for the Blind. He is
Yes.
a longtime Braille teacher. He is blind, and he has
Yes.
put together a very accessible, free Braille correspondence training program that
Yes.
he's operating out of the East Bay Center. That is, I think, wonderful. Another organization that's been teaching Braille for many years is called is Hadley Helps. They used to
Yes.
be called the Hadley Institute, and
Yes.
they do a lot of online Braille training, along with
Yes.
training many other subjects as well. And then there
Yes.
are other organizations doing Braille training. So if you are interested in Braille, the resources are out there. And while it may feel daunting, it's worth it. It will
Yes.
benefit you to learn Braille. And Braille
Yes.
is practical. You can use it. It's not just for reading novels. It's
Yes.
for doing everyday things like being able to read a recipe,
Yes.
or,
Yes.
or being able to take notes and record phone numbers or keep track
Yes.
of your financial records. It's extremely practical, extremely empowering.
Yes. Yes. I'm more motivated to do it, Frank. Thank you.
Great.
Yes. Um, you're definitely very adventurous. And I read that when you started with Ski for Light, um,
Yes.
it was a big challenge for you. Can you kind of tell us more about it, how you became a skier?
Yes, I think that's exciting. And I'm going to mention that I believe that there are three elements that lead to thriving as a blind person.
Hmm.
And one of those elements is getting good medical care. Whatever your visual impairment is, I hope that you have access to medical care that's appropriate for your situation.
Hmm.
But for a lot of us, if not most of us, that medical care isn't going to lead to a cure. And that's not the
Hmm.
worst thing in the world, by the way. The
Yes.
second thing, though, is rehabilitation training. In other words, learning those skills that are not all that complicated once you learn them, that allow you to do the major functions of your life that you think you can't do anymore. For
Hmm.
example, you can still read if you're blind. You can
Yes.
still maintain your home if you are blind.
Yes.
You can still manage your finances if you're blind. You
Hmm.
can still travel independently. You don't need to have somebody lead you around by the hand for the rest of your life. You can learn to travel independently. And
Yes.
that is so empowering to do those things, learning. And when you learn those skills, that's extremely empowering. And the third element, and I think it's often overlooked by too many people, is the
Hmm.
value of community. When you
Yes.
get involved in a community of blind people who are living our lives and doing interesting things and getting out into the world and learning what they can do, not only that, but sharing our workarounds for challenges with each other.
Hmm.
When you put those three things together, proper medical services, proper training, and embedding yourself in the community, that is like a sturdy three-legged stool
Hmm.
that is going to empower your success.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely correct. The more I participate in the community work, like Vista Center, then I get
Absolutely.
a lot of tips for day-to-day stuff. And it is, as you said, truly empowering because after coming back, I would come home and try out all the tips and tricks and feel really, really
Absolutely. Yes.
invincible.
Hmm.
It is really good. It's very addictive. The energy that you gain from the community is very, very addictive. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. So those three things.
Tell us how you learned to ski.
Okay. Well, one of the programs that I learned about through my involvement in the blind community was a program that's called Ski for Light. There
Hmm.
are also this is a program that teaches blind people and people with other disabilities cross-country skiing. Now, a lot of people in the United States hear more about downhill skiing. Of course, it's a very popular part of the
Yes.
Winter Olympics, which we just had this last winter.
Hmm.
But cross-country skiing is something that you do on skis, but it's very different. Rather than just flying down a hill at scary speeds, cross-country ski cross-country skiing is more like hiking.
Hmm.
You can go uphill, you can go downhill, you can go across flat. And so the thing that I like about it as a sport, and I've tried a little bit of downhill, but I've done a lot of cross-country skiing, is that cross-country skiing is really adaptable for your level of physical fitness. It has a reputation for being a very tough sport.
Mm-hmm.
And that's true if you're really like an athlete, a professional. I mean, if you're like an Olympic skier, athlete, cross-country skier, then it can be very intense. But you can, with cross-country skiing as a blind person, you can do it at whatever level you feel comfortable with. If you would like to just stroll through a meadow, you can
Uh-huh.
do that on skis. If you like to be a little more adventurous and tootle up and down hills, you can do that. If you want to go long distances, you can do that, or you can do short distances. So it's very flexible. The other thing that's great about cross-country skiing is that the equipment is much lighter than the skis you use for downhill
Okay.
skiing. So it's less expensive, it's more comfortable, and and so and so I think in many ways it's more accessible and more available, I think, in many ways than downhill skiing, because pretty much if you have snow, you can do it. You don't have to go to some mountain expensive ski resort somewhere. You can do it
Hmm.
anywhere. You
Hmm.
can ski in a park. You can you can ski down a road if the road is snowed. So you can it's more flexible. And a program that was developed originally in Norway to encourage blind people to be more active through cross-country skiing came to the United States in 1975. A Norwegian gentleman by the name of Olaf Peterson, who had gotten involved in the program in Norway, brought it over to the United States,
Hmm.
and they started having annual events. And so for now, over 50 years, they've done an annual event. And I had been hearing about it for a few years, and it had been exciting to me. So
Uh-huh.
finally I went, and I had been a little hesitant because I was not somebody who thought of myself as an athlete.
Hmm.
I'm not particularly a muscular individual.
Hmm.
I'm more of a book reader. But what I experienced was that when I had the experience of actually getting out there, I
Hmm.
fell in love with it. Going out and learning to ski. The program has very good instructors that are able to work with students at their level. As a beginning skier, I
Hmm.
was very well supported, and I found it very rewarding. And the other thing that I didn't realize that I learned is that you may think that you have to be very coordinated, very athletic, very muscular, all of that in order to participate in an event like cross-country skiing. But the truth of the matter is, it's more about your desire to be out there and do it, because it's not about you being talented. It's about letting your body learn how to do cross-country skiing. And the way you do that is by putting your body out there where it can learn. And the body does the learning. It's not you who do the learning. It's your body. And your body can learn.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's a wonderful experience. And I think that's probably true for many other sporting events, is that you may think that I'm not an athlete, so I can't do it. But the real key is putting yourself in the places where you can do it, and your body will learn it for you. And you just get to go along for the ride and have a good time about it.
Yeah. And
So
you're surrounded by
that's what skiing was
friends.
like for me. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're also surrounded by friends
Yes,
and
absolutely. It's that
guides.
whole community thing going for you again.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
I think you're a very good teacher, I think, Frank, because you put things in a very, very simple way. Yeah. It's true that, I have tried to learn to ski when I
Hmm.
had my sight, but I was
Yes.
not very successful. But so this program I did not even attempt. But I
Yeah,
think
I would
you're motivating
definitely.
me to attempt. Yeah, yeah.
And just like the Braille Challenge,
Yes.
Ski for Light has regional events around the country. There's one in California, by the way. And
Yes.
again, they're where the national event is a week-long program. A lot of the regional events are more like maybe 2 or 3 days, or maybe they'll just do a series of day trips. But so I would encourage listeners, if you think, wow, maybe I would like to try cross-country skiing, contact Ski for Light directly if you want to see about going to the national event. Their website is sfl.org, as in Ski for Light.
Hmm.
And then they will have links to their various regional events. So you can find out about regional events that are maybe closer to you than the location where Ski for Light takes place. Ski for Light takes place, again, primarily in more northern climates and generally in more mountainous climates, of course, where the good snow is. And it moves around the country. It's been in Colorado a number of times. It's been in Minnesota a few times. It's been in various other states, everywhere from the Northeast New England area over to the Rocky Mountain Western area and places in between. So it moves around the country. But again, the regionals are in the same places every year. So if you don't want to travel across country, you can probably find a place closer to you where you live, and you can try it out and get started.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Frank. Yeah, I think we're almost coming to the end of our podcast. I have a couple of questions, Frank. Before
Okay.
that, would you like to share anything else with the viewers?
I'll mention one thing that my Braille has done for me is that it's made an employment opportunity for me, because my job now is that I work as a Braille transcriber at the Media and Accessible Design Laboratory at the Lighthouse for the Blind and Visually Impaired in San Francisco. So I do Braille for a living, which is very neat. And yes, blind people can do Braille transcription, uh, and there's actually a free training program that is sponsored by the National Library Service for the Blind and Visually Impaired, which is the Braille library that's associated with the with the Library of Congress. And the organization that administers it is the National Federation of the Blind. And so if you want to find out about becoming a blind transcriber, or if you're a sighted person that would like to get certified as a transcriber, the course itself is free. You just go to nfb.org/transcribers, and you may be able to start a new career.
That's awesome, Frank. So my question to you would be, if you have unlimited resources, you talk about people, real estate, money, computing power, AI power, name whatever it is. If you have unlimited of that, what is the one thing that you would want to do for the visually impaired and blind community?
I would love to be starting my own Braille transcription service, and then once I get that running, I'd like to get into producing materials in other media formats like audio and accessible electronic documents and so forth. So yeah, that's what I would love to do is actually do what I'm doing, only do more of it.
And employ more people in the
Yes,
process, right?
yes,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
right.
Awesome. What would be your advice to the young visually impaired and blind students?
Learn Braille, study hard, follow your interest, even if you don't know if a blind person's doing it, because there's probably somebody doing something that you wish you could do who also happens to be blind, and plug into the community.
That's awesome piece of advice,
Yes.
Frank. And we wish you all the very best with your new Braille transcription services that you want to start. And dear listeners and viewers, if this podcast resonates with you, please go to www.accessbraille.org and look up the volunteering opportunities. And definitely you can be part of this program that Frank wants to be. You can be part of realizing his dream of starting a new Braille transcription services as well. And I, once again, thank you so much for your time, Frank.
I've been delighted to be here. Thank you.
And thanks to Ram Kumar, who is my partner in crime, and Shankar
Good job.
Venkatraman. See you all until next time.